Embracing the tapestry of life, the imperative of ecosystem health and biodiversity, the importance of preserving ecosystem health and ecological biodiversity. In the intricate dance of life, every flutter of a leaf, every ripple in a pond, every creature from the smallest microbe to the grandest whale plays a part. This episode discusses the profound interconnectedness of all living things and the environments they inhabit. We explore the delicate balance of ecosystem health and the rich mosaic of biodiversity that sustains it, from the silent encroachment of toxic substances to the thunderous arrival of invasive species. We examine the forces that threaten this balance. We also reflect on the ethical responsibilities we hold as stewards of the earth and the pressing need to safeguard the natural legacy that is biodiversity. As we stand at a crossroads with the power to alter the course of life itself, this episode is a clarion call to action, a reminder that the preservation of our planet's vibrant diversity is not just an ecological necessity, but a testament to our collective future. When we create engineering projects, it's crucial to think about our planet and all who live on it. These projects should be built and run in a way that's kind to the environment and benefits everyone fairly, ensuring a healthy world for the generations to come. Today we are going to talk about two big ideas that matter a lot of our future: keeping harmful chemicals away from nature and making sure all kinds of life forms can thrive together. Harmful chemicals can affect the health of our ecosystem in two ways. First, they can cause problems that we can see in the numbers or health of plants and animals. Second, they can disrupt the balance of nature, which might stop certain species from playing their part in the circle of life. This isn't just bad for the environment, it's also dangerous for us. When fish and animals that we eat are exposed to these chemicals, it can make us sick too. Bioconcentration happens when a living thing directly takes in a chemical from its surroundings. For instance, mercury can move from water right into tiny water organisms called phytoplankton through their cell walls, or it can enter fish through their gills. This process can lead to higher concentration of the chemical inside the organism than in the environment around it, which can be harmful. Bioaccumulation, or what's sometimes called biomagnification, is like a dangerous savings account for chemicals in nature. It's when these chemicals build up in living things over time, not just from the water they live in or air, which is bioconcentration, but also from all the contaminated food they eat. Picture plankton in the water soaking up a contaminant. When fish eat lots of these plankton, the chemical piles up even more inside them. It's a chain reaction that can end up affecting the entire food web, including us. Even though a lot of energy and living matter gets lost in moves up the food chain, like when creatures breathe out or get rid of waste, certain chemicals, think of mercury, PCBs, DDT, and some flame retardants, stick around inside organisms. This sticking around together with the natural loss of living matter means that these chemicals get more concentrated at each step of the food chain. It's like a game of telephone where the message gets louder instead of quieter, which with each person it passes through. Let's take a closer look at how mercury can become a big problem in water, even if it starts with a tiny amount. Imagine a drop of mercury in a large swimming pool. That's like the 0.01 microgram per liter we might find in water. But as a small fish eat plankton and big fish eat small fish, this tiny amount can skyrocket to up to 2000 parts per billion in top predators. And it doesn't stop there. Animals higher up the food chain, like humans, bears, seals, and even birds like gulls and eagles, can end up with even more mercury in their bodies because they eat these fish. This is why we often find high levels of these chemicals in animals that have fish-based diets. The buildup of harmful substances in nature has had devastating effect on various wildlife species. Moreover, this process of bioaccumulation can greatly increase the amount of these chemicals that people are exposed to, posing serious environmental risks. Given the dangers these substances present to both humans and wildlife, it's becoming incredibly important to deepen our understanding of how bioaccumulation works and the full extent of its impact on us and the world we live in. It's a call to action for more research and awareness to protect our health and the health of our planet. The bioconcentration factor, BCF, is a way to measure how much a chemical can build up in an organism compared to its environment, like air or water. It's calculated by taking the concentration of the chemical inside the organism and dividing it by the concentration in the environment around it. This is important because it helps us understand just how much a chemical can accumulate in living things, especially when they are only getting it from their immediate surroundings. This number tells us if a chemical is likely to stay inside an organism and potentially cause harm over time. The higher the BCF, the more attention we need to pay to that chemical's presence in the environment. The bioaccumulation factor, BAF, is a measure that tells us how much more of a chemical is found inside an organism compared to its surroundings, considering all the ways the organism could have absorbed it, like through eating or drinking. It is a bit like comparing the amount of sugar in a cupcake to the sugar in the flour bag. This ratio includes all the sources of the chemical, not just the immediate environment, but also the food the organism eats. It helps us understand the full extent of chemical buildup and guides us in assessing the potential risk to the organism and, by extension, to us. The higher the BAF, the more we need to be concerned about the chemical presence in our ecosystem. The bioconcentration factor, BCF focuses on the passive way chemicals get into organisms, which doesn't depend on the organism's own behavior. This makes BCF a useful tool for comparing how different chemicals might pose risks to living things and their environments. Creatures that have a lot of fat tend to soak up more of these chemicals. For example, fatty fish like trout and salmon often have higher levels of BCBs compared to leaner fish like largemouth or smallmouth bass. This issue of chemicals building up in animals had led to warnings about eating fish in many places, from Florida to Minnesota. People are advised to cut away the fatty parts of fish to reduce the intake of these chemicals. But with some contaminants like mercury, this doesn't help because mercury spreads evenly throughout the fish body. So the best way to stay safe is to watch how much fish you eat each week. Biodiversity, short for biological diversity, is all about the wide range of life we see around us. It's it's a it's not just about different kind of animal and plants. It's also about the unique genetic makeup within each species and the variety of roles they play in nature. Just like people can be very different from each other, even if they are from the same family. Animals and plants of the same species can vary a lot, especially if they live in different places or at different times of the year. These differences can change how they handle changes in their environment or their role in the ecosystem. That's why when scientists want to bring back a type of fish to a place where it used to live, they try to use young fish from nearby areas to keep the original genetic traits. Looking at the big picture, it's clear that the health of the whole ecosystem is just as important, if not more, than any single species. This is why preserving biodiversity is so crucial. It's about protecting the entire web of life. Throughout the Earth's history, the natural pace of species extinction has been relatively slow, allowing evolution to introduce more diversity over time. In the last 600 million years, this slow but steady process has been interrupted by 5 major mass extinctions, likely caused by events like meteorite impacts, volcanic eruptions, and significant climate shifts. However, in our current era, it's humanity that's causing a massive upheaval. Our actions are our actions are changing the planet so rapidly and drastically that we are losing species at a rate never seen before in recent Earth's history. It's as if we have set off our own catastrophic meteorite impact or volcanic eruption, with our influence reaching every corner of the globe and threatening the rich tapestry of life that makes up our world's biodiversity. It is true that individual species face extinction, but the bigger picture is how this loss affects entire ecosystems and their working. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change warns us that the natural balance of many ecosystems is at risk of being overwhelmed this century. This is due to a mix of climate change and its related problems like floods, droughts, wildfires, insect outbreaks, and ocean acidification, along with other issues such as changing land use, pollution, and the overuse of natural resources. It's a complex challenge that threatens the intricate web of life that sustains us all. Certainly, it is the species that often targeted, for example, by hunting or poaching, but human stress may be manifested as well through negative effects on the ecosystem. Threats to biodiversity can be organized into 5 categories. 1. Overharvest. 2. Habitat destruction. 3. Species introduction into ecosystems. 4. Chemical pollution. 5. Global atmospheric change. Of these, overharvest has perhaps the longest history. The hunting of waterfowl, harvest of wading birds for their feathers, and the relentless pursuit and killing of bisons are well known from the 19th century America. More recently, Overharvest from non-sustainable overfishing is threatening the future of marine fisheries. The landscape we once knew, sprawling grasslands and dense forests, have either vanished or changed beyond recognition. Urban sprawls and the way we use land have chopped up these natural homes into isolated fragments, leaving many species struggling to survive in what's left. While it's normal for new species to move into new areas as the environment shifts, humans have sped up this process, sometimes by accident and sometimes on purpose. This rapid change uh, can wreak havoc on local wildlife and the balance of the ecosystem. Take, for instance, the various mammals introduced to places like New Zealand and Australia, which have had profound impacts on the native species and their habitats. An ecosystem's risk of being disrupted by new species grows when it's already weakened by things like pollution and the loss of important native species. Invasive species are outsiders that settle into a new ecosystem and start to crowd out the locals, putting the natural diversity at risk. Sometimes people bring these invasive species into new regions on purpose, like certain types of trout in western rivers, and other times they show up by accident. Either way, they can cause big problems for the original inhabitants and upset the ecological balance. It's a reminder of how delicate our ecosystems are and how careful we need to be with our actions. When we build on land that used to be untouched, and when cars and trucks roll into areas that never had roads before, we are not just changing the landscape, we are also opening the door for invasive species, plants and animals from other places that can take over. These newcomers spread quickly and can be very aggressive because they don't have the natural enemies they faced back home. This lack of competition and predators lets them thrive, often at the expense of local species. As a result, invasive species are a big reason why we are seeing more extinction and a drop in biodiversity. And with our world becoming more connected, this problem is only getting worse. It's a global issue that needs our attention if we want to preserve the rich variety of life on our planet. Chemical pollution from oil spills, excess nutrients from wastewater treatment, agriculture, and city runoff, along with heavy metals like mercury and leftover pesticides, has been proven to harm ecosystems. On top of that, global climate change is expected to have a severe impact on the health of our ecosystem. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has found that about 20 to 30% of plant and animal species evaluated to the time could face a higher risk of extinction if the global average temperature rises by 2 degrees centigrade. This highlights the urgent need to address both pollution and change to protect our planet's biodiversity. Since the Endangered Species Act was passed in 1973, the idea of biodiversity and its worth has become well known to many Americans. Yet, putting this belief into practice can get tricky, especially when it comes to managing natural resources and making regulations. Take the northern spotted owl in the Pacific Northwest's ancient forest as an example. The timber industry strongly opposed adding this bird to the endangered list. They argued that the economic downsides, like job losses, were a bigger concern than preserving the diversity of wildlife. This highlights the complex balance between conservation and human needs, a debate that continues to shape our approach to protecting nature. There are several compelling reasons to support biodiversity. The first is the potential of plants and animals to greatly enhance our food sources and medical treatments, thereby improving health and extending human life. For instance, a type of corn found in Mexico has shown disease resistance and growth characteristics that could transform how we grow corn. In medicine, many treatments have roots in nature, like aspirin, which comes from willow bark and meadowsweet, and powerful cancer-fighting drugs that come from the rosy periwinkle, a plant native to Madagascar. These examples highlight the incredible value of preserving the diverse life forms of our planet. The second reason to champion biodiversity is that the very fabric of an ecosystem is woven from the relationships between its many parts. Losing just one piece, like a single species, can unravel this tapestry, leading to lasting and potentially irreversible damage. For instance, the spread of invasive plants like spotted knapweed is pushing out local plant life and reducing the food available for livestock. Similarly, purple loosestrife is taking over many wetlands, pushing aside the native plants that wildlife depends on for better nutrients. The third and final reason to support biodiversity is deeply ethical, reflecting our responsibility as caretakers of Earth's intricate ecosystems. Our environmental values have matured over time. We have moved from the early days of colonial America, where natural resources seemed endless, through eras of growth and industrialization, to our current reality. Now, we are facing the finite nature of our planet's resources, witnessing the decline and loss of valuable social, economic, and environmental treasures. This shift in perspective underscores the moral imperative to preserve the delicate balance of life that sustains us all. In conclusion, we have explored the intrinsic value of biodiversity not just for its aesthetic or scientific significance, but for its critical role in sustaining life as we know it. The loss of a single species, the introduction of a foreign organism, the spill of oil, or the warming of our planet, each of these can send ripples through the intricate web of life, altering it irreversibly. Our ethical duty as stewards of this earth compels us to act with foresight and compassion. We must embrace the diversity of life, not merely as a resource to be exploited, but as a sacred trust to be protected. As we look to the future, let us commit to nurturing the health of our ecosystem, to celebrating the myriad forms of life they support, and to ensuring that the symphony of nature continues to resonate for generations to come.